So on my other channel, I had briefly mentioned several days ago about a database I came across. It's about all the mental health crimes, like by psychiatrists, facilities, and I don't just mean Medicaid and Medicare fraud. I mean, that's rampant, but no, way worse than that. It was like 92 pages going back to 2008, listing these people. And this is near and dear to my heart because I'm a psych nurse. And sadly, this doesn't surprise me, though, because I've said in other videos, we're not asking the right questions when it comes to mental health. We don't show positive outcomes. And I think people just get into this groove. Well, this is what we do. And it's like, but it's not working. We have a revolving door. We have the psychopathic CEOs of the hospitals who cut staff so much that there's not even group for the patients many times in the units. Like because if they, believe me, if they don't care about staff, that's one thing. They don't care about the patients. They care about that dollar. So they'll cut they'll cut staff to the point where there's 2 employees, but then the managers, they don't even consider about groups. Like, you need to have somebody there to do groups. But it's not a system of caring right now, which is why I go off on the the nursing associations. It's why I go off on it so much, because while they're focused on, hey, we're with the UN and we're going global, they should be focusing on the priorities at hand, which is patients. So that's the reason why I get so mad. I know I get very mad, but it truly, these are supposedly like your magnet nursing. These are the examples that have always been said to me are the experts in excellence and leadership, and yet they're just focused on being globalist commies instead of focusing on the most innocent and the most vulnerable. That's what nursing should be doing. I'm not saying all nurses in the field don't, there's many nurses that care. I'm just saying the ones that promote themselves as being about nurse excellence are anything but that. So, and a couple of these places I've worked at, not when these things happen. So here's one. This is Sequel Youth and Family Services. So one of the things they do, before I get to that, there's a big one that, well, no, there's not just one. There's several. But there was this one in Pennsylvania called Kids Peace. And it's changed over time. And they all do this. It's very alarming, actually. Because it seems like they all came in as orphanages after the Great Depression. And then over time, they change. They change their name. So here's the one on Kids Peace. And it's one word, kids, and then peace, P-E-A-C-E. The chain of mental health facilities currently now known as Kids Peace originated in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania in 1882 as an orphanage called the Thurston Home for Children. The name changed a few times, and by 1943 it was known as Wiley House. The name it would keep for the next 50 years. The organization changed the name to Kids Peace in 1992. It is now headquartered in Snakesville, Pennsylvania, about 15 miles northwest of Bethlehem. The organization focus of service also changed over time. In 1930, during the Great Depression, Wiley House switched from being an orphanage to handling foster care services. In 1958, inspired by Children's Rights Conference in Washington, D.C., the organization hired a caseworker and revised its intake policy. By 1961, Children's Mental Health Services had become Wiley's House primary focus. They currently own 4 inpatient facilities in Georgia, Maine, and Pennsylvania, and 10 outpatient partial hospitalization services. So they have a huge their timeline of abuses. They have starts with a death in 1993. Kids Peace counselor Dean Sign, 29, was charged with involuntary manslaughter in the death of a 12-year-old Jason Tallman, who he restrained by sitting on for approximately 10 minutes. suffocating him. So I've had to do restraints before. Sometimes they are necessary, and if you don't have a good team, that you're screwed. You're screwed. I will do everything possible to avoid restraints. Most people will, because it's just, unless you're a psychopath. There tends to be psychopaths that are drawn to the profession. I will say that. I think because it's vulnerable people. But I've never seen anybody, because I would raise holy hell. I mean, it's obvious I have a big mouth. I'm an introvert, though. So it's just rather surprising. I've been doing videos. But this stuff's important to me because these are innocent lives and the public doesn't know. And yet this is, like I said, 92 pages of crimes of psychiatrists and social workers that voluntarily gave up their license or went to jail because of videotaping stuff they did to kids, just all sorts of stuff. And then that's on top of your people that this happens, like to this 12-year-old boy that was sat on. And here's the problem with this, and I've seen this at your hospitals and your freestanding psych facilities. Your freestanding psych facilities are those psych facilities where they're not connected to a hospital that has like a med floor and ER. They're just straight psych facility. They will keep, it doesn't matter if it's in the hospital or this freestanding, they will go out of their way to keep, it's everywhere I've worked. I shouldn't say everywhere. 99% of the places I've worked, they will go out of their way to keep the most abusive employees. They will. An entire staff, an entire hospital could have made complaints about one violent employee that's been aggressive to children and adult mental health patients, and the managers for nursing will go out of their way to make all these excuses why they don't do anything, because the hospital doesn't want to get rid of them. That's who they'll keep. That's who they will protect. And if you keep bringing it to their attention, they'll try to nail you for you're targeting them. Yet they're the ones that are aggressive. But the people that care, they won't hesitate to get rid of you. I've had it happen, and because I do care, and there's a lot of nurses that care. But the mental health nursing, most especially, I don't know what it is. There's something dark in it, and I think the whole thing should be taken down. Like I think every institution should be. I'm not saying that like I want to leave people without other avenues. It's just it's not one that's working. The other problem is most especially and most important to me is the children in the Department of Family Services system. So the Department of Family Services system was designed to serve your pedophile government to help traffic children. Now, I never saw that when I worked. I never saw any trafficking, but I saw neglect. I know emotional abuse happened. I talked about it in many videos on my other channel, maybe even on this channel, about what's happened. I haven't been quiet about it because it was wrong, and that's just to one kid. And yet there's nobody at any level I have fought at that would do anything. No alderman, no newspaper. They all cover for it. So when I say that the system is corrupt through and through and there's more people that are bad, I mean there are more people that are bad. There are more people that are willing to stay silent than do the right thing. So also, so moving on from that, most of these start out as orphanages that happen to have formed, after the Great Depression. You know, the bankers, they created the Great Depression on purpose to steal a bunch of money, and oh boy, a bunch of kids were left without parents. That served them too, because they're a bunch of pedophiles. So then, we got to open all these orphanages and bring these kids in, and it just so happens it was a bunch of Roman Catholic priests that just all seemed to have a liking towards young kids. And then they changed the names of these places, just like this kids piece. That's what they do. That's what they did with the one here in my state, Maryville Academy. Now there's still Maryville Academy Residential, but they had an acute hospital. Now it's Chicago Behavior. It just changes. And then, so that's part of the problem. They changed the name, then they changed the services. Goes from just a boys' town for orphans to then their mental health. They all seem to do the same thing. Why? Because it serves your pedophile government system that's been in place for so long. DCFS is a horrible service, horrible service for children. And I know a nurse right now that works in neonatal intensive care, NICU. It's for, children that are born preemies. And like 50% of the kids are well, she's in an area where there's a lot of, it's a population that has a lot of drug problems. So many of the mothers are addicted, and so then the kids are addicted, and they end up right in DCFS's hands. The worst place they could end up. Most of the foster parents, there are some good foster parents, I just never saw them. Most of them just get into it for the money, and DCFS seems to go out of their way to put these kids in the most abusive or neglectful homes. I know that's hard to hear, but it's the truth. And these children so they go from a traumatic situation into another. I think that's the hardest thing for me to wrap my head around is that these poor kids, they didn't do anything wrong, and then so these foster parents, they get a lot of money for each kid they foster. So some of these foster mothers or families have like 10 foster kids, so they're raking in the dollars, believe me. But they don't use it for the kids at all. It just goes in their pocket. It's horrible. And DCFS loves to put kids in. I'm sorry, but that's the way it is. All of the Department of Family Services should come down. But as long as we have the pedophiles in office at the state and federal level, it won't change. So we have a pedophile FBI agency that just protects pedophiles and criminals. So as long as those agencies are still in place that only protect pedophiles and criminals, then we'll continue to have the system we have. And so all you can do is speak up to it, which I'm doing. So anyway, this kids piece goes from the timeline of abuse is November 17th, 1993, all the way to, it's been an ongoing thing from a death, and then goes all the way up to 2021. So you can go on this site, it's called psychcrime.org, and go under the database, and then the database just lists them, and then you can click on whichever one you want. It's across actually it's across the world, but really mainly the United States. So sexual abuses, at least 10% of psychiatrists admit to sexually abusing their patients. Some studies estimate that the figure is as high as 25%, and a California study claims 48%. All studies estimate that a vast majority of these rapes go unreported. So, most of these are, there's so many, there's more than one crime, and a lot of it is sexual and physical abuse. This was one I know personally. Northern Illinois Academy, this is June 2021, is in the process of shutdown after a damaging report released in May shows serious allegations of physical and sexual abuse. An 87-bed residential treatment facility for individuals ages 6 to 21 who are diagnosed with mental illness or disabilities. So, I know them very well. This was a complaints by parents. Quote, my son attended Northern Illinois Academy and our county worker pulled him out because of abuse. So and again, this is, I don't know, maybe this was Equipped for Equality that had went in there. It says, as you read throughout the report, we had different recommendations on whether to continue to license the facility or other licenses. The agency does not have the power to shut down any facilities based on report findings. The report completed by independent agency Equipped for Equality at the request of the Department of Family Children Services in Illinois details specific situations and circumstances involving residents and their families who came forward on various claims. So it doesn't, you can go on the link, so you can go on this site and look this up, but there's so many. This is just one of many. The fact that Department of Family Services was involved in this, I don't trust them at all, because I know how they operate. So I'm not doubting this. It's just interesting that maybe it's because family came forward. They certainly don't treat the children in their services good. They don't have care. This Northern Illinois Academy, it's also connected to, what it's tied to is sequel schools, and that's in several states. So see, even though Northern Illinois Academy is tied to sequel schools, you wouldn't know that. So it's kind of seems like the kind of fraudulent stuff they do to maybe throw people off. I don't know, but all of them do that. So some of the other things, here's another one. It's on this sequel, Youth and Family Services. This is 2022. New lawsuit against Owens Crossroad Facility. Details staff on patient violence. This was in Alabama. So this is not helping patients. And part of the problem here is because these people running these places at the top, your hospitals, I call them psychopaths not to be extreme. It's because they keep the violent people in place. I've not, for the life of me, for the 11 years I've been a psych nurse, have been able to figure out why they do this. I believe it's because it's wickedness. It's all over our government, and it's all in our institutions. So when I say the institutions and the whole Constitution should be looked at, it should, because something's not working. But then again, if you believe in the Bible says where we're living. So, but I'm not going to go through all of these. You can, as I said, it's 92 pages, but none of this surprises me. And since there's nothing any of us can really do about it other than speak up, we should at least do that, because especially these kids in the DCFS system, they don't have anybody. And they're God's children. So at the very least, we can all pray, because there's been too many children already harmed. And God willing, maybe someday soon, all of these agencies, all of these pedophile protectors will be brought to justice.